Hey, it's Jordan with Status Coup. It seems like the corporate mainstream media has received the bat signal and is now, in a coordinated manner, going after potential third party candidates, specifically Cornel West, who, to be clear, has to win the Green Party nomination. So we don't want to just declare him the Green Party nominee. Got to be fair to other candidates in the Green Party process. But the media is already kind of framing Cornel West as the Green Party candidate. He did poll in his first poll that's out at 6%. Pretty impressive considering, I would say, the wider country probably doesn't even know he has entered the race to win the Green Party nomination. But a couple things that I noticed that is they're framing a narrative to try and frame Cornel West as a spoiler candidate. A gadfly is another phrase used. Let's look at Politico from this morning. Politico has their little morning newsletter. And interestingly, the morning newsletter seems to put a lot of stock into Cornel West, possibly costing Biden the election. Let's take a look here. So Politico is referencing a memo from Doug Sosnick, who is a political strategist who does a lot of polling analysis. And they look at Sosnick's breakdown of the 4 different buckets of voters. We'll do it quick. Number 1, the double doubters, people who have a negative view of both Biden and Trump, are perhaps the most important group of swing voters in the upcoming election. This is not an insignificant voting bloc. In an ABC Ipsos poll taken after Trump's most recent indictment, a majority of the country had a negative view of both Biden and Trump, with only 31% having a favorable view of the candidates. So tied at 31% between Biden and Trump in terms of favorability, which is pretty pathetic. Actually, probably historically pathetic. Then Sosnick looks at abortion rights voters, which that's their biggest issue. In a mid-June Gallup poll, 69% of respondents, 74% of independents said that abortion should be legal in the first 3 months of pregnancy. That's the highest level in the history of their polls. Obviously, abortion, specifically the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade, helped the Democrats avoid that red wave or red wedding, so to speak, and do a lot better than people expected in the midterms. The media framed it as Biden helping the Democrats. It was not Biden. It was the Supreme Court. Then he breaks down Republicans. Results for the 2022 midterms, as well as recent polling, suggest that a group of Republican voters will be up for grabs in 2024, particularly if Trump is on the ballot. And he deduces that there's at least 1/4 of Republican voters who are open to voting for Democrats based on the governor's results in Arizona, Pennsylvania, Nevada, and Georgia from last year. Recent polls indicate that roughly 1/4 of GOP voters have serious qualms about another Trump nomination. And then he goes to independents. The winning party in the last 4 election cycles carried political independence. 2022 exit polls show that over 30% of voters were independents, highest percentage since 1980. Finally, the big wild card. This is where the third party spoiler stuff comes into play. Will be the presence and strength of any third party candidates. In 2016, the double doubters, many of whom voted for third party candidates, probably cost Clinton the election. This is the talking point that Jill Stein is why Donald Trump was elected, not Hillary Clinton winning a horrendous campaign, spending more time fundraising in the Hamptons in the last few months of the campaign than actually campaigning, not her not going to Wisconsin. It was Jill Stein, of course. In 2020, Sosnick notes, with no viable third-party option, Biden carried these double doubters by 15 points. The good news for Biden, in a late April AP poll, among double doubters, Biden leads Trump by 39 points in a straight head-to-head matchup without a third-party option. Bad news for Biden, Cornel West recently announced he will seek the nomination of the Green Party, which is already on the ballot in Wisconsin, Michigan, and North Carolina, while No Labels continues to pursue a potential center lane presidential ticket featuring Joe Manchin or Larry Hogan. What a joke to describe that as center. Joe Manchin is an extremist, conservative fossil fucker, but I digress. If there is a Biden-Trump rematch, Sosnick argues that Trump needs someone like West on the ballot. Trump can't win without a third-party candidate dividing the anti-Trump vote, with the exception of winning Georgia in 2016 with 50.77% of the vote, Trump never reached 50% in any of the competitive states. So what you have here is the media using data and their framing of the data to make the claim that Cornel West is going to pull enough votes from Biden, that will put Trump over the edge. And this is assuming Trump stays in the race. I'm not so sure about that because I personally think there's 2 more indictments coming. And I think Donald Trump would sooner make a deal for, slap on the wrist, house arrest, maybe a month in prison, at a bed and breakfast type prison with the rest of the sentence being house arrest, than actually, going to prison for the rest of his life. And if he dropped out, part of that deal, he would frame it as it was the deep state ending our movement, blah, 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 blah. But Donald Trump, if you know about Donald Trump, he's a germaphobe. There's no way he would be willing to go to prison, in my opinion. But if you look at the numbers, I mean, putting aside the spoiler propaganda, which we'll get to, the data does show that if Cornel West is the Green Party nominee, it's very likely a lot of these states that Biden took from Trump, and the reason Biden won, it's very likely Trump would have won these states. I mean, you look at, let's look at Michigan first. Joe Biden won Michigan by 154,188 votes. I would think Cornel West could get that many, if not more, in Michigan. There's a lot of blue collar workers in Michigan. Major cities have a good amount of black voters in Flint, Detroit, other predominantly black cities. I think Cornel West could definitely get to 154,000 votes, if not more than that. And most of those votes would be coming from the Joe Biden column. Then you look at Pennsylvania, where Joe Biden won by 80,555 votes in Pennsylvania. I'm pretty sure Cornel West could surpass that in Pennsylvania. And then you look at Wisconsin, Biden barely won. You're talking 20,682 votes. Without a doubt, Cornel West could get more than 20,082 votes, 682 votes in Wisconsin. And then you look at the Jill Stein factor in 2016. So if we're throwing her in Michigan, Jill Stein got 50,700 votes. So Biden won Michigan in 2020 by 154,000 votes. With respect to Jill Stein, I'm pretty sure if she got 50,700 votes in 2016 and Biden won by 154,000 votes, Cornel West just needs to get over 100,000 more votes than Jill Stein got. I do think he could do that. If you look at Pennsylvania, for example, where Biden won by 80,000 votes, Jill Stein got 48,912 votes. So basically he would have to double Jill Stein in Pennsylvania. I'm pretty sure he could do that. And then you have Wisconsin, where, again, Biden won by 20,000 votes. Jill Stein in 2016 got 30,000 votes. So just that Jill Stein margin in 2016, Trump would have won Wisconsin. Again, this was 2016, Jill Stein. Of course, Biden was 2020. So no disrespect to Jill Stein, but Cornel West obviously has more name recognition, is a different kind of candidate, has a different message, could probably attract, I think, more non-voters possibly to come out, could probably attract more Republican voters who are blue-collar Trump voters. Not a huge amount, but a decent chunk. So I think in those three states, Cornel West could pull enough voters away from Joe Biden to give the states to Trump. How the media frames that is not how I would frame that. Let's listen to one more segment, which was, frankly, propaganda about the third-party spoilers taking away the presidency from Joe Biden and giving it to Trump.
As the 2024 presidential primary race starts to heat up, some fringe candidates are already gaining momentum. In a new article for Vanity Fair, our guest Mark McKinnon writes that presidential hopefuls like Marianne Williamson, RFK Jr., and Cornel West might seem like pesky, small-time tormentors, but in reality, they are seasoned, self-assured, and camera-ready candidates, and they are already stealing buzz from Trump and Biden. Bob Torselli and Mark McKinnon, the author, are still with us. Mark, how big of a threat are these fringe candidates to the current frontrunners? Because if you're perusing Twitter these days, there's a whole bunch of alpha macho men riding RFK like he is Secretariat these days, and they think he is the voice of the future.
Yeah, well, there's two ways to run in politics, scared and unopposed. So the better way to run is scared when you have these fringe candidates out there, because one thing we know is that the media pours a vacuum, and they also hate a rerun, right? So they're going to look for any conflict, any place where there's a storyline. And as I mentioned in the piece, those three may be fringe candidates, but they're seasoned people. They're articulate. They have interesting, if maybe out there ideas that the media is going to gobble up. And there's some interesting things coming down the line that I think are specific to this election that are going to provide even more oxygen for those candidates. And I mean specifically the fact that Joe Biden has decided to skip Iowa and New Hampshire, go to South Carolina as the first primary. Well, that means that those three and perhaps others who may yet get in are going to suck up a lot of media attention and oxygen during those critical months when that's where all the media are going to be.
I think, first of all, it's an enormous mistake of Joe Biden to skip Iowa and New Hampshire. So I agree with Mark. It's going to create a platform and an opening which otherwise would not exist. It may be that none of these candidates at the moment have enormous followings and seem like credible threats, but Pat Buchanan, after all, did get George W. elected, and Bill Clinton, Woodrow Wilson, a host of other people became president because of third-party candidates. I would take it seriously in the White House. Joe Biden is going to win or lose the presidency by 2 or 3 percentage points.
So I think what he meant was Ralph Nader is why George W. Bush became president, because that's obviously the longtime narrative for Democrats and Republicans. He said Pat Buchanan is why George W. Bush became president. I don't really think too many voters were voting for Pat Buchanan instead of Al Gore. I don't think Ralph Nader cost Al Gore the presidency. I think Al Gore lost his home state, and Al Gore and the Supreme Court stole the election because Al Gore actually did win the election. So this whole notion that Ralph Nader beat Joe is why Al Gore lost. Al Gore didn't actually lose, and I'm not an Al Gore stan, but it was the Supreme Court. But anyway, I digress. Listen, right now, Cornel West is at 6% polling, and again, fairness, he's not the Green Party nominee. We'll see how that plays out. I'll be covering their process. But assuming he is the nominee, it's very likely Cornel West, with name recognition, a lot of overlap with the folks who supported Bernie Sanders, maybe some support among the right. I don't think it's without the realm of possibility. Cornel West could get between 10 and 15% of the vote. Ross Perot, remember, in 1992, got almost 20% of the vote. And Bill Clinton did have Ross Perot to thank for pulling those votes. Predominantly, Ross Perot pulled votes from George H.W. Bush. So I do think Cornel West is a real threat to Joe Biden. But instead of a spoiler framing, why is it that the media isn't calling Joe Biden the spoiler? Why isn't the corporate media saying, wait a minute, the fact that a sitting incumbent president is vulnerable at all, facing a potentially 4-time indicted Republican candidate. Right now, he's 2-time indictment. Very likely he's going to be indicted at least a 3rd time in Georgia, possibly a 4th in January 6th. Not to mention a candidate who, in large part, was responsible for an insurrection. Yes, it was an insurrection. The fact that Joe Biden has any votabilities head-to-head against Donald Trump, put aside the third party, in head-to-head polls, Biden right now is either losing to Trump or polls have him narrowly up within the margin of error. So wouldn't Joe Biden be the spoiler? Why is he vulnerable at all to one of the most unpopular, disgraced former presidents in American history? One of the least popular candidates in America across independents, Democrats, even Republicans. Yes, he's obviously popular among Republicans, but not to the degree he was in 2016 or even 2020. Why isn't that being discussed among corporate media? The fact that a third-party candidate, even without a third party candidate, Biden is extremely vulnerable to Trump, and he's more vulnerable against DeSantis. So the framing clearly shows they don't actually want to focus on the fact that why is Biden so vulnerable if what he has said, if what the DNC has pushed is true of this historic economic recovery, of we're bringing jobs back and made in America again, of we have, corrected and fixed our tarnished reputation abroad. If everything's so, sunshine and roses, why is he vulnerable at all? They're trying to gaslight and distract by spinning, which they've done basically for 20, 30 years, the third party boogeyman. Now, will Cornel West pull votes away from Joe Biden? Absolutely. Will there be, not a lot, might there be some Republicans who don't like Trump, who there was some overlap between Trump and Bernie? I saw it in 2016 where Republican voters like Bernie's message. You might have some Republican voters vote for Cornel West. Does this give Cornel West, if he's the Green Party nominee, an enormous amount of leverage to demand that Joe Biden move further left as president? Hey, I'm talking about as Cornel West, horrible impersonation. Brother Biden, you want to win? You want our third party race against you, not to make a dent, not to spoil? Here's a bunch of executive actions you could take right now as the sitting president that might attract voters considering me on climate, on health, on civil rights, on voting rights. Hey, Brother Biden, you proclaimed to put these people in your administration, including me, Dr. West. You might appeal to my people who want to vote for me. If you actually currently give voters what they want. Hey, Brother Biden, you moved away from a $15 minimum wage. Good. Now you got to run on a $20 minimum wage. And you got to pledge that if you win again, you're ignoring any outside parliamentarian advice. And you're pushing it through democratic reconciliation process. If the Democrats have the House and the Senate, that you will do a reconciliation package in the Senate and you will put it through, unlike what you did not do during the COVID Act, where you pulled it out of the reconciliation bill, citing the parliamentarian. I'm not saying Cornel West drop out, but Cornel West would have power to say, hey, if you want to attract my voters, if you want me to compliment you, if you want me to give you applause, here's the things you could do that might make voters considering a third party, might make voters considering me want to vote for you. It's on you. Devil's advocate will say, well, Jordan, you're playing with fire here. Do you want another Trump? Do you want DeSantis? No, I don't want either of them. I've seen covering Trump and covering DeSantis. These are not people you want anywhere near the White House. But at a certain point, we can't keep succumbing to this psychops and this reverse psychology that it's on the voters to prevent disaster. It's on us to gift Biden, who has abandoned the very, very minuscule promises he made to the working class. It's on us to continually bail out the Democratic Party to avoid fascism. It's on the Democratic Party. It's on Biden. It's on the DNC. You got basically a year and a half till the general election. There are executive actions you could take. To hell with the legal challenges. You think the Republicans don't care about legal challenges. They invite them. So I don't buy into the Cornel as spoiler. I do buy into the media is trying to gaslight us away from who the actual spoiler is, which is Joe Biden.